This is a normal keyboard. Actually, never mind. Okay, this is a slightly more normal keyboard. And what I mean by this being normal is not the extra keys. It is not the caps lock that I should be a control, but instead it is the fact that all the keys are slightly staggered. So the main keys don't go straight down like this column here, but instead they are slightly misaligned. So if you have your gamer WASD, the W is slightly closer to the A button and so on. And it is said that the reason behind this is that the QWERTY layout used to be for typewriters. And a way to make typewriters not jam up when typing is to stagger the keys a bit. And there's a chance that you've also heard that the QWERTY layout itself is purposely designed to be inefficient for the same reason, which is why a lot of people are interested in layouts like Colmac and Dvorak. However, some people feel like the keys being staggered is also a legacy feature that shouldn't be the case anymore, which is why keyboards like this exist. I haven't actually unboxed it yet, so... Okay. Ooh. Now this is an ortholinear keyboard. Wait, for some reason the spacebar is a bit tilted. Okay. This is also a split spacebar, more on that later. So this is an ortholinear keyboard, meaning that all the keys sit exactly on top of each other. So just to compare again, only if you compare it with a keyboard like this do you realize how staggered normal keyboards actually are. And we are pretty much all used to typing on staggered layouts like this. The muscle memory you have right now is mostly not going to apply because the key positions are so incredibly different. So okay, before I even touch this keyboard, let's see how fast I can type on my normal keyboard, which I concluded wasn't very normal after all. But by the way, this is the board from my split keyboard video and I'm still using it, and as a status update, I am much more used to it than I was even in the conclusion of that video, so I like it even more now than I did before. But the issue is that the N and I keys sometimes send two characters for whatever reason. I'm not really sure if it's the switches that are the issue or if it could be because I have... because it's technically two keyboards connected into one. So this might actually mess me up. Okay, I got 134, but the attempt actually wasn't very good. I don't feel really warmed up. You know how sometimes you can type like really smoothly and really fast? Well, that's not how I feel right now. I feel like my fingers are really clunky. But anyway, let's say I can type around 140 BPM if I'm like really warmed up. So let's see what it's like to type on this keyboard. But okay, before I actually like try hard, I just want to type into a notepad or something. Okay, I'm not going to look at the keyboard, so I'll just try to type how I always would. What? Wait, oh wait. I haven't connected the keyboard to my computer yet. I'm so smart. Oh, and yeah, and these are also the extra things that come with this keyboard. So some extra keycaps, some gasket mount stuff, as well as a screwdriver and an Allen key and stuff. A very nice white cable. I'm not really sure how I feel about these being silver plated because they don't really match the rest of the keyboard. But at the same time, it sort of works. Yeah, it sort of works actually. Oh, and by the way, Keychron sent me this keyboard as well as this one. But this video isn't sponsored in the sense that I'm not getting paid for it. This video isn't really a review, but this keyboard is really similar to the Q60 Max that I already made a review of. So if you're interested in a review of this keyboard, you can just watch the Q60 Max review. It even has the same switches. In terms of build quality, it's really similar. It actually has RGB right now, which I don't know how to turn off. I'll just try to touch the knobs as well. Oh, okay. Okay, let's try to type for the first time now. So I used to be like an adventurer like you, nah, but not then I took an arrow in the knee. Okay, this looks like something James will type. But this keyboard feels so incredible though. It has the same Jupiter bananas that the Q60 Max has as well, but I feel like overall this keyboard feels slightly better. It has some metal pinginess, but I personally like that. It feels and sounds really dialed and solid, which I really like. Okay, now I'm actually going to try to type as fast as I can, and I'm going to be looking at the keyboard at the same time, so oh, fuck. First attempt, 49 VPM. I'm going to remap the caps lock to control because I cannot control backspace otherwise. Okay, let's try again now. Okay, 64 VPM. It's actually not as bad as I expected. I expected it to be much worse. I feel like I could hit 100 VPM in like 10 minutes of trying. However, here's something I noticed. I feel like when I type words that contain ZXC, I make some rather unergonomical movements because of this layout. So on a normal layout, this bottom row is much more to the right, but if you're used to the staggered layout, because of your muscle memory, this layout is most likely going to feel less ergonomical. But when I look at it, I could just move my finger directly down instead of having to twist my hand or fingers. I mean, I guess you can do that here as well. I don't know, I'm just yapping at this point. Okay, anyway, the ortholinear layout aside, I feel like this keyboard might actually not be the best option. Why is it suddenly like, what? Was this like this before? Like the O and P key are suddenly like covered in some green color. Okay, it just wipes off. But okay, the ortholinear layout aside, I feel like this particular keyboard has a very strange layout. So first of all, where is the tab key? There is no tab key on this layout, because instead of an escape key here, it has a knob. Oh, this is a nice knob. In my Lemo key review, the knob was made out of plastic and it was also loose because when I touched it, it wobbled. But the knobs on this one are very solid. They don't wobble, and I feel like they're also made out of metal. So these are some really nice knobs. My question is it worth it to have two knobs instead of an escape key here and an additional key here? Because if you compare these two, this keyboard has 12, 13, 14, 15 keys on top, while this one only has 12. So it's missing 3 keys from the top row compared to this one. It's most likely not the end of the world, because thanks to this bottom row, you can do some pretty nice remappings with this keyboard because everything is close. But I feel like this is going to be a deal breaker for me. I'd rather just have an escape key here. I mean, you can press it, but this is heavy. 300 grams at least. You can see the keyboard getting depressed as I'm pressing this. Wait, what is the layout of this keyboard? Okay, what? The tab key isn't mapped by default. So you literally don't have a tab key out the box. Well, this is not an issue because you can remap it, but I really wonder what kind of an activity they designed the default layout around. Okay, both the knobs are for volume. I was really curious what they're going to be using 2 knobs for. So I was hoping that by default they would have some clever remapping, but they kinda don't. Wait, this key is pass-through, meaning that it does nothing. Okay, clearly it is intended that you remap this keyboard yourself. But this really begs the question of whether or not they thought the double knob layout through or not. Like, did they actually come up with some cool idea of how to use them? Or is it just a gimmick that you can kind of DIY to make it work for yourself? I mean, that's clearly what I have to do though, so I guess I'll do that now. Okay, what if I put the tab key over here? That seems pretty awful though. If I'm an epic gamer, I can hit the tab key with like the palm. What is this? Is this the palm? What is this called? Side of my hand, like this, whilst hitting other keys. Having 2 function keys is kind of smart though, because they are pretty easy to reach, because you can do even more stuff thanks to having so many function keys. Okay, I spent some time customizing the layout, and now there's nothing really else left to do other than to just try this keyboard out for however long I feel like I need to try it out for. And here are my predictions as well as concerns. So first of all, an ortholinear keyboard is something that I would have never bought by myself, because in my mind right now I feel like it's not going to be worth it to undo the muscle memory I have for the regular layout that I've practiced for my entire life essentially. And my VPM is like decent enough that I don't feel that having a staggered layout is holding me back in any kind of way. So if I'm honest, I really don't see the point in putting a lot of effort into relearning the basic keyboard layout, because I don't think it's going to give me anything. I feel like even if I spent multiple years on a layout like this, I might still be faster and maybe even more comfortable on a staggered layout. So I feel like getting a keyboard like this is something that you do if you're like interested in trying new things, I guess, which is kind of what I'm doing because I didn't buy this keyboard. Keychron sent it to me. And actually the reason they sent it to me is because I made a video about split spacebar keyboards and they were like, hey, this keyboard has a split spacebar too. But this is not the type of splitting that I was talking about because these are both spacebars. But on this keyboard, these are the spacebars. This is a function key, this is an alt key. So it doesn't have the same effect. The point of this keyboard is that my thumb key for the function key and alt key is in a comfortable position here. However, on this keyboard, if I want to hit the alt, I need to bend my thumb like this. And if I want to hit the function key, I guess I have to hit it with the corner of my hand here. And the same goes for the Windows key. I am most likely not going to be daily driving it permanently for the simple reason that I've pretty much decided that I want a keyboard that has thumb buttons either in the middle or under the spacebar, which is something that I only know like 2 keyboards have right now. Mostly the HSKB Studio, which I still haven't tried, but I really want to. But also because I feel like the issue with an ortholinear layout for me is that even assuming that I can get so used to it that I'm up to speed with a regular layout, the problem is that I'm still going to be using, for example, my laptop, which doesn't have an ortholinear layout. My phone keyboard doesn't either. But now if I have like multiple different keyboard layouts as well, physical layouts that are like constantly fighting with each other in terms of the muscle memory, like I'm not really sure if I want that, if I'm really honest. But maybe I'm going to get used to this and say that, oh my god, this is actually so good, I'm never going back to staggered layouts. So I'll be using this for a while and then report back on how the experience went. Also, before I cut into the future, this keyboard was also sent to me by Keychron, and it's a Hall effect keyboard, so it has magnetic switches, meaning that you can have those trigger point customization, rapid trigger type features and whatnot, as well as use it as an analog gamepad. For example, recently I played Need for Speed Carbon, and it would have been kind of cool to have a keyboard that's like sensitive to how deep I press the button for like smoother turns and such. But what I wanted to say was that listen to this keyboard. This actually might be the smoothest keyboard I've ever used. If I really try, I can induce some steppiness, like if I bend them to the side and whatnot. But generally speaking, they are definitely incredibly smooth. And it also looks pretty nice. I like the keycap profile. In terms of build quality, I'm pretty sure that this is plastic. It's much lighter, which can be a good thing. But the reason I'm personally not going to be daily driving this keyboard, other than the fact that it doesn't have thumb keys, is because the switches are a bit too heavy for me. On this keyboard, I went with really light linears because it's less fatiguing when I'm doing work and such. But these are like really heavy linears, which makes sense because if you have like analog input that's sensitive to how deep the key is pressed, you don't want it to be so light that you cannot control it with your fingers. But anyway, I'm going to be daily driving this keyboard now, so I'll see you when I either give up or fall in love with this layout. There's actually a yellow bird here. My grandmother gave it to me. Okay, so clearly the assumption I had about the ortholinear layout being difficult to get used to was wrong, because I've been using this keyboard for only a few days, or like 3 to 4 days, and I already hit 138 VPM. And that wasn't even a perfect try, I had to backspace so many times. Moreover, a different assumption I had was also wrong, which was that if I use other devices, such as my phone and my laptop, that do not have an ortholinear layout, it really isn't a problem because I don't feel like my typing is obstructed on those other devices. And when I come back to this keyboard, I can still type on it as if I was still used to the ortholinear layout. So essentially, getting used to an ortholinear layout is really easy. And if you're forced to use staggered layouts from time to time, like on your phone and laptop, it's not really a problem either. But at the same time, that also sort of means that the ortholinear layout, compared to a staggered one, really doesn't make that much of a difference. Like, just to be very honest, it really doesn't feel that different. It doesn't feel like you're typing on a completely different kind of a keyboard. It just feels like you're typing on a regular keyboard that maybe has a slightly shorter shift key. so it's a bit hard to get used to at first, but once you're used to it, it's just a normal keyboard. That being said though, it's not that simple either, because in a way, the ortholinear layout definitely feels more right. Like, it just feels less awkward than having a staggered layout where you slide your fingers downwards or upwards and they're like in the grooves of other keys. But here it's just you slide your fingers up and down and they're just perfectly on 4 keys, which technically speaking makes it both easier and harder to tell where your fingers are when you place them, because these grooves here give some level of tactical feedback which tells you where your fingers are. Like, I can easily tell that this finger is on a shift key because it just feels slightly different and it's in this one specific groove. But here it's like each of those grooves feels literally exactly the same. But these are just subtle details. It really doesn't matter that much at the end of the day. So an ortholinear layout is most likely not going to make you faster at typing. It is not that different in terms of ergonomics. In fact, there are custom staggered layouts which are supposedly more ergonomical than an actual ortholinear layout. And at the end of the day, it truly doesn't feel all that different and it really doesn't matter that much. But if I had to choose one layout for the rest of my life, I'd maybe go with an ortholinear layout. Which begs the question, will this keyboard become my new daily driver? And the answer is no.
No.
So even though this ortholinear layout is nice and all, it truly doesn't make that much of a difference. Which means that the rest of the layout, so how the keys that you're going to be using are placed from your fingers, as well as how much room for error do those keys have. And when it comes to this keyboard, first of all, the fact, okay, I'm going to put the plant a bit further away. The fact that there is a key missing from the corner here is a deal breaker for me. So currently I have the tab key mapped to here, and I don't want to put it under a function layer either, because I already have a bunch of functions under these keys. And having no key in the corner is such a waste, because if you slide your fingers across the keyboard, you can feel when you've reached the corner of the keyboard, meaning that hitting this key here has no room for failure. The same goes for all of these edge keys and so on. So having a tab key here and an escape key here just makes so much sense. So doing things like programming is much harder than it should be. And because there is a key missing from here as well, I'm using this 600 gram button for the plus key right now. Oh, by the way, I mapped this side to be up and down arrow keys so I can scroll with it, and this is just volume that I don't really use because I'm using an audio interface that already has dials like this for both my speakers and headphones. Moreover, not only that, but I really don't like this layout here. So this is something that the HSKB layout is incredibly good at, because not only is it really easy to tell where your fingers are relative to the shift key, but also the shift key is properly long, so there is no room for error when it comes to hitting the shift key. However, on this layout, first of all, you literally cannot tell when your finger is on the shift key because it's just a single key next to a bunch of other single keys that all feel exactly the same. So if you're typing really fast and want to hit this key blindly, it is so easy to miss it. And personally, I much prefer the HSKB arrow cluster compared to this one, because just look at the difference between these movements. If I want to hit the arrow keys, I need to move my entire hand quite a lot. But on the HSKB, these are the arrow keys under the function layer. So all I have to do is slide my fingers a little bit and I can already use them, instead of having to go like down here. And finally, something else I made a big point about was that this is a custom keyboard that I built myself, and the only reason I built it is because I wanted more thumb keys. However, funnily enough, that was the only thing that ended up not really being a problem about this layout, because it has 2 spacebars. However, I remapped this one to be an alt key. I really like this alt key because, you know, it's really comfortable to press, but the same applies for this one. I don't need to bend my finger awkwardly to reach this one or whatever, and only using this key as a spacebar is not really a problem at all. And this is a function key, so if I hit this with my thumb, I can use the arrow keys and additional backspace and delete keys and so on. But I put the function key over here on this keyboard. So let's say I want to use the WASD as arrow keys. I just hit this function key with the corner of my hand, and now I have arrow keys, a backspace and a delete key, previous, next, enter, and so on. So by using this key as a function key and this one as an alt key, I was pretty satisfied with that aspect. But despite all that, the corner keys being replaced by knobs is a deal breaker for me, and I'm also not the biggest fan of the tiny shift key here. So despite this being a really well built really nice feeling, nice sounding, super solid keyboard that has 2.4 GHz wireless modes and Bluetooth and so on as well, I'm not going to be daily driving it because of these issues. Oh yeah, and for whatever reason, the enter key also likes to get a bit tilted if you press on the sides, but that's not really a problem. I don't really care about that too much. So anyway, by doing this experiment, my eyes have been opened to ortholinear keyboards as well, and I actually want to keep on using it, but these issues are just a deal breaker. Maybe not for you, but for me. So I am most likely going back to this Frankenstein of a keyboard. In fact, I'm actually kind of curious, how well can I type on this keyboard now? Okay, I'm not even going to finish it. I just cannot type on it anymore. But I know that I'm going to get used to it pretty fast, so I guess the only keyboard I still want to try and haven't tried is the HSKB Studio. But anyway, hopefully this video was interesting, and I'll see you in some other video.